That Samaritan that you were so, why were you trying to do this?
It was his script. I wasn't looking to do this kind of movie, and I've never done this kind of movie before. But Brandon made a horrible mistake. He allowed me to see the script before other people did, and as soon as I saw it, I called him up and said, "You're not allowed to show this to anyone else because I'm going to go make this movie." I just found out. I just thought it was great writing. I thought it was original, and I thought it would challenge me. I thought it would allow me to do something I've never done before.
You had mentioned in the panel about a lot of the horror movies are sort of splatterpunk right now. You wanted to do something different. Can you describe what kind of feel you were looking for in this movie?
Well, I like suspense. I like the terror of real horror as opposed to the stuff that's way over the top. In other words, there's nothing in this movie that can't or hasn't already really happened. So there's this fear as you watch the film. It's like, this could be me. I could be in that situation. This whole concept that he came up with of that we hand our keys at a valet, and on that key is usually the key to our house. And our car has a registration that has our address in it. But we don't even think of these things. So I mean, it just as I read it, it resonated for me.
I've just been interested in, I guess, for probably the last couple of years, just these things that we put a lot of faith in, whether it's locks or passwords or things like that, and how if somebody with a mind to do so wanted to exploit and break through every one of those, how incredibly vulnerable you are instantly become. For me, the horror of this movie is not as much, what Carrie Condon's going through. It's exactly what we're talking about. It's somebody getting into your life and then systematically trying to dismantle it, and the repercussions of that.
How were you able to make this without the big studio? I mean, that was the thing. I mean, it's an amazing looking movie. It doesn't look like at all.
Thank you. And we've been up in Portland now since 2007, and we have 4 sound stages. And over the years, between doing the TV series Leverage and then doing Librarians, we've developed this huge prop warehouse, this huge costume warehouse. We own our cameras, our dollies, our lights, the trucks. So we had our own little studio. And when the script came along, I thought, this is exactly the kind of movie that'll get destroyed if you try and do it at a studio. If you get a big studio involved, you're going to cast it incorrectly. You're going to change it based on whatever was the last hit movie, not what's right for the movie. And I said, I really need to do a movie properly, or I might never direct again. So we just said, you know what, we're going to roll the dice. So we just wrote a check, and we made a movie. And we hope to God we didn't make a really bad decision.
So when you read the script, did you already picture David Tennant in that role as well as some of the other actors, or did that come after reading it?
It came after. I mean, when I first read the script, I was just so blown away by the whole thing. And then we started talking about actors. And there's certain actors that you always bring up just because you're desperate to work with them. And I've tried to cast David in the last 5 things I've done. And for a variety of reasons, I couldn't. And some of it was studios not understanding what a big star is. And so Brandon was my real partner on this, by the way. A lot of times a guy comes and writes a movie, and then you bring in 10 other writers who do rewrites, and they're not allowed on the set. Brandon and I were attached to the hip through this whole making of the film. So as we went to cast it, we started talking about people. And then I kind of sheepishly said, well, you know who I'd really like? And then he said, that's a pretty cool idea. How do we get him? And then we begged, borrowed, and stealed.
Mm-hmm. Just a quick follow-up on that. Had you seen him as Kilgrave before he got cast in this?
No. By the time he was actually cast, he had done the part. But at the point we started talking about it, I hadn't seen that yet. And then when I saw it, I was like, oh my God. This guy's literally the greatest villain ever.
I'm the complete opposite. I've never seen Doctor Who. For me, David Tennant...
I was going to say, just as a clue, Kilgrave wasn't Doctor Who.
No, I'm saying I've never seen the show Doctor Who. So the way I came to David was through Jessica Jones and Broadchurch. That's what I saw. And that's why I thought, well, of course this guy can do it. He's exactly this guy. And so it was, for me, the revelation of David was what a great guy he is, and how charming and funny, and his sense of play that he can bring to something. That was all the stuff that I learned once I got to know him and work with him. But that intimidation, that sort of laser-like focus when those eyes lock on you, like I knew that stuff was going to be there the second I saw him in Broadchurch and Jessica Jones.
How would you differentiate this film from other thrillers that have high concepts? What makes this different and more special?
Well, I don't know about more special, but I think the thing is that this really is a morality play. And, I think that traditionally in these things we have super Joe Average guy in an extraordinary situation, and Joe Average guy is a super great guy who gets stuck in a bad situation. Our lead character is not so clean. I mean, he lies to his girlfriend. He is a thief. He's not a bad person, but he's also not the greatest guy either. And he's trying to find himself. He's a young kid who's on a kind of a messy path. And it leads him to this really, truly horrible decision. And then the big question is, if you've made a horrible decision like that, what happens after that really defines you. And this character literally could not live with the idea that moment defines him. So he has to erase that moment, even if it means losing his own life in the process. He'd rather die than live forever as the guy who made that terrible decision. And I think that's probably the biggest difference, in that it's not the common good man in a bad situation. It's a bit more morally ambivalent character who's made a really, really bad choice.
Did you find this challenging to direct? You're usually, big explosions and everything. Did you challenge yourself in trying to do a different approach?
Yeah, every aspect of this was different than what I've done before. So even, as Brandon talks about, we did a lot of preparation on this movie. And from the lenses we used, from the fact that we used almost no light whatsoever. I mean, almost all of this film was in natural light. How close the camera was to the actors. Normally I have much longer lenses and I'm farther away, and I have to talk to the actors and say, the camera's going to be uncomfortably close to you. You're not going to be accustomed to having a camera this close to your face. But by doing that, it created this awkwardness, this tension. But to answer your question, yes, every single aspect of this was different than anything I'd ever done before. And that was both incredibly exhilarating and absolutely terrifying. And I really did not know if I had completely screwed up until we had that first screening. And we were there together, and we're both in the back of the room going, oh my God, I hope this works. And then when we heard the people screaming and then laughing and then cheering, it was just the greatest moment ever.
There's no comfort zone for the people in this movie, and we realized, I think, sort of instinctively, we need to be out of our own, to do that, to really tell this story, because it's not a studio film. It's not something that you've got an atypical hero. You've got a woman in distress who turns out to be very heroic. You've got all these things that are really keeping you on edge, and you've got just constant tension being ratcheted up. So we kind of instinctively knew to keep ourselves in that. That said, this might be the second film that Dean has directed, but this is a guy who's spent his life in the film business, is one of the, is a showrunner of incredibly successful television, understands every aspect of this business. But the thing that I knew all that going in. What I didn't know until the second we started talking was, his facility with actors. And then I remembered you were an actor all the time. And then, and that.
Him too. He's in the picture.
But day one, the way that in being an actor, I knew I could hear the way that Dean was talking to an actor and giving them something that was very playable and understandable, instead of results oriented, but telling them sort of what the kind of talk that an actor needs to get that performance out of him. And he did that day one, and I was like, okay, we're gonna be okay.
Is this going to the big theaters?
Yes, we'll be in 2,500 screens on May 4th.
Awesome.
Terrifying, but yes.
So you've gotten Legion M involved with this.
Yeah.
Gotta go there. What can Legion M do for Bad Samaritan, and how did that come about?
Well, normally to open up a movie like this today, studios are spending anywhere between $30 and $60 million to open up a film. We don't have anywhere near that kind of money to open a movie. So we're going by a really different approach. We're really doing this like a grassroots political campaign. We're going right to the people who might buy the tickets, and we're trying to talk to them. And we're trying to say, if you know other people who might like this movie, talk to them. Because we don't have the money to pay for nonstop ads on television and billboards, and we just don't have it. So Legion M is a grassroots company. I mean, by nature, they are literally owned by their own fans. And so what we're working on with the Legion is they're going to organize screenings, they're going to do giveaways, they're going to all the conventions, even the ones I can't go to, they're going to. And we're going to really try and reach out directly to the customer and say, we think you're going to like this product. And if we can convince them, hopefully they'll talk to other people. But, the Legion has over 30,000 people across the country and in Canada, and they're organizing screenings, they're organizing parties to watch the movie, to discuss the film. So, if this movie succeeds, it's really going to be from the bottom up.
So what can people do to help get it in theaters?
The best thing to do is to talk about it on social media. Use the hashtag Bad Samaritan. The more people know about it. What happens is, in movies today, about 3 weeks before a film opens, they do a thing called tracking, and they just ask people, have you heard of this movie? And if you're on tracking, then the people who own the theaters feel really confident. They put you in the better theaters, and they get behind it. If you're not on tracking, they're worried no one's going to show up, so then they put you in smaller theaters. So we only really have money to spend about a week and a half before the movie opens. So we won't have money to get us on tracking. So the best thing we can do is have people talk about the film, spread knowledge about it, get people to watch the trailer. The trailer is our best tool for understanding the movie. And if enough people know about it and we show up on tracking, we won't just be in 2,500 screens, we'll be in the best 2,500 screens.
You talked a little bit about the moral ambiguity of the hero. That actually interested me. Was it tough to cast the role of someone who kind of walks this moral tightrope and make it relatable?
Well, I think that's the thing. I don't know if you were in the panel, but I described how the studios were absolutely sure that the audiences would hate the character in that moment. Now, they didn't say that because they're stupid. Had we had an actor who couldn't pull this off, you would have hated him. He would have been a liar. He would have been a thief. And he would have been this terrible guy who left this girl behind. But what they didn't factor in is a brilliant actor who could really reach to the depth of that moment. If you think about the movie, the actor and I talked about this, but if you think of the movie Schindler's List, if you remember that amazing moment where there's the boy, the soldier at the bottom of the stairs, and his friend is being killed up the stairs, and he's paralyzed. He can't run, he can't go to save him, he's just frozen with fear, that depth of fear. And I had an actor who was willing to play that, who was willing to go that deep with his character. I think without Robbie's performance, it really easily could have gone south. But we made a commitment as filmmakers not to hedge it in the script. We said we're going to trust an actor to get us there because we thought it was a lot more interesting. But, in a normal movie, he'd have been, a guy who works at an orphanage, who's the sweetest kid in the world, who's taking care of his ill mother, and then these bad things happen to him, and, we love this guy, we hate that this happened to him. We wanted to not love this guy until he earns our love. But to do that, you really needed a great performance. And I'm going to go out on a ledge here, but I think Robbie Sheehan is the best actor under 40 today. And, well, I found him from the TV show Misfits. And I was crazy about him on that. But I'll tell you a little story. So we're in the middle of shooting the movie, and again, it's a low-budget film. And Robbie comes to us, and he says, I have to fly to San Francisco this weekend. And I said, Robbie, you can't do it. I said, if anything happens Sunday night and the plane's delayed or the plane's canceled, we're screwed. We can't afford to not have you show up Monday morning. I'm sorry, I can't let you go. And he said, but Peter Jackson is asking me to audition for the lead of his new film. I said, I'll pick you up at your hotel and drive you to the... And he got it. He's the lead of Mortal Engines. So he's about to explode as a giant star. And he deserves it because he's fantastic.
And he I'll say it again, he just wasn't afraid to bring that vulnerability and those flaws that the character has. Unfortunately, there are a lot of stars who just don't want to look bad, and that's kind of what leads to them the studio notes saying, can't you make the guy work in an orphanage, or can't we give him something more heroic to do? And that just wasn't the movie. It just wasn't as interesting. So good on him for being able to do it, and you for finding him. It's great.
And I think there's something about him being Irish too that worked.
Totally.
He was nice to listen to.
We have two Irish actors and a Scottish actor. So
But the other two are playing Americans.
yeah, playing Americans, and he's playing himself.
Do you find as a that helps you with your writing process?
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does.
I've always wanted to say this line, or I've always wanted to say.
Well, I mean, I certainly say everything out loud to myself. I have to remember somebody has to say these things. Somebody has to say things, and somebody has to play it, emotionally. And so just keeping that in mind, I think, just makes it, a lot easier, and hopefully makes it just, feel playable, but still interesting to hear.
What was it like to act in your own film and have Dean direct you?
Honestly, on those days, I'm just an actor. I mean, I think we did the first shot, and the first day we were sort of outside, freezing, and afterwards our cinematographer our camera operator came up to me holding one of the marks, and he says, "Have you ever seen one of these? Because you obviously don't know what this is for." so that was Gary. So, but on those days, I've done my work, so I have to just be an actor. With improvisation, I probably granted a little bit more license with improvisation, but then again, I kind of feel like I had it right on the page at that point, and if I don't, then that's a problem with the writing. So. But it was fun, and I appreciated the opportunity.
He was misbehaving on set. I had to call the writer down. The writer had to talk to him and say the lines like I wrote it.
Now, that would have been an interesting conversation to hear.
Yeah.
We've left you speechless. Can you talk a little bit about the process of rewriting the character to be Irish? That was not originally, the character wasn't going to be Irish.
Originally this story took place in Los Angeles with two American kids. And, as we were talking, as Dean and I were talking, and he wouldn't shut up about this guy, Robbie Sheehan. So I'm like looking him up, and I'd watched Misfits, and I thought, well, yeah, he actually is great. But then we realized that really could be part of the story, is that, he came here came here with his mom, who's remarried an American, and we just sort of worked out this whole story about he didn't really want to come here. He doesn't really like that stepdad, and that all factored into the relationship that made that a lot richer and gave him something to play. And it just put a kind of a chip on his shoulder, And Robbie's got, Robbie's kind of like that, and and to his advantage. And he just fell right into that. So I think it was a great choice, along with moving it to Portland, which really gave it a feel and a look and a tonality, and it helped the time of year, unlike LA, which the seasons never change. And Dean has done a couple of shows up there, and frankly was so dialed in that we just Dean already knows every location in Portland, and so that really helped.
How did you prepare to become this creepy, intimidating, scary guy? Like, right now you're very casual, and then you have to, like...
Well, I'm a pretty nice guy in the movie, but for David to do it, it was, I guess probably there is a little bit of myself in him, but the same with all the roles, really.
He knows everything about every psychopath that ever lived. Literally, I would suggest an idea for the character, and he'd say, no, that's not how they think. And then he'd bring out these books, and he would show me in the books the way a psychopath, and I was like, okay, I get it now. So yeah, he's incredibly well versed in people with twisted minds.
So with a show that obviously had a lot of psychological twists to it, was there anything you had to do to make sure that the actors would be okay, so that you hear stories of the impact of those kind of films on the actors?
Well, the thing that's interesting is that we had actors who were very good, but also had different styles. As they were talking about before, Tennant literally can turn it off the minute you say cut. He's literally, the shape of his face changes. And then when you say action, and it changes. I mean, it's amazing. He had this shark-like dead eyes thing that I don't know how he did, but he just, as soon as he said action, which is cut, it went away. And then he was just himself. On the other side, Robbie, for instance, there's a section where he's tied up and he's in the snow and he's beaten, and it was freezing that day. There was literally a blizzard happening. And after every cut, everyone's running to the tent to be warm, and he would stay out there. And we'd say, "What are you doing?" And he said, "No, my character's being tortured right now. I have to sit here." And he stayed there in the cold the whole day. And his lips were getting purple, and like I'm getting worried he's going to get sick. But that was his way to get to that place. And so you'll see there's this showdown in the movie. You've seen the film. Yep. There's a showdown between David Tennant and him. And they're so intense, both performances, and both approached it completely differently. But they both got to the same place through different roads.
And it was completely seamless to sort of know how to deal with and talk to each actor, and Dean did a great job of managing that. And Jackie and Carrie and Carlito, they'd already agreed. I mean, once they were in with the script, they sort of knew what was going to be, what was going to be in store. They knew it was going to be in Portland. They knew we were shooting in the dead of winter. Everybody was on board. So once they were committed, there was very little pushback on.
But we were very
stuff.
careful. Like, for instance, a lot of the movie Carrie is tied up, and we literally. I put on the chains first to show her, and then we had another person put it on first. We really wanted her to feel confident that she wasn't going to be injured physically. And when you see the performance, it looks like everything hurts but that's her performance. So yeah, I'm not a believer in putting actors or crew members at risk when you shoot a movie. I just don't think it's worth it. I think we have all kinds of great digital effects. Like, there's a moment in the movie, it's a tiny moment, when the car hits the other car and you see it. Digital. I don't need a car to hit another car. There's a beginning part where there's a horse being whipped. Digital. I didn't hurt no horse. I didn't have no horse getting tortured.
No blowing up a house.
No. Everything.
That was cool.
Everything was done safe because you can today, and so you should. We took a lot of time with all the actors to make sure that they knew we don't want you to get hurt, and that's why Jacqueline's story is so hilarious. I mean, tragic but hilarious in that we were telling her to do it safe, and she smashed her own head into the bricks.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap this one up. We're going to actually swap you guys out with that table. And
thank you so much for being here and talking about our film. We really appreciate it.